Please do not mind my appearance. I need to take a shower. Recently I've gotten a job, so I haven't had a lot of time. I really haven't. So basically in today's video, I'm gonna be a little bit vulnerable. I don't think I'm saying that right, but I'm gonna be saying a few things that like I'm kind of nervous about. And like I haven't really talked that openly about it, and I'm trying to get better with talking openly about it. But basically yesterday, which would be June 7th, was Tourette's and Tics Awareness Day. I have a tic disorder. I don't have Tourette's. And I've had it since 2020, technically, is when I got diagnosed with it. Of course, that year, right? But I started having tics from what I noticed since 2018. Like if you go back and you look at my old videos from 2018, you'll see a few. So yeah. Anyway, yesterday I put out on my Instagram story any like questions about tics or anything like that. Like I said, I'm trying to be more open about it. Yeah, so let's get into it. I'm gonna try to put it on the screen. Hopefully it works. So the first question I got asked, and I am gonna use my phone because I have it like all written down. So the first question I was asked is a very controversial one. Do you think anxiety tics are real? So I am a psychology major, and as a psych major, anxiety tics is not a medical term, and anxiety also doesn't cause tics. However, anxiety can make tics worse. Some people also show stim-like behaviors when anxious, like repetitive movements, like tapping, fidgeting, or body rocking, which are more about self-regulation than tics. Also, there's a growing body of research on functional tic-like behaviors, FTLBs, which are sudden involuntary movements or sounds triggered by anxiety or psychological distress. These aren't the same as the classic tics, but they're very real. They're just psychogenic and not neurological, if that makes sense. So while not all anxiety tics are medical tics, the behaviors people experience are valid, real, and supported by research. So that's my thought process on anxiety tics. The second question was, what were your first tics? I'm like trying so hard. You guys don't even know. My first motor ones were eyebrow raising, which I still have, and leg kicking, which thankfully that one is gone. And then my vocal ones were clicking of my tongue. It's my most common one, even now. It's always been a tic for me, always. And clearing my throat, which that one doesn't happen a lot anymore, but that was one of my first ones. And then the third one, how do your tics affect your daily life? So my tics are mild, so they don't completely take over my day, but they still affect me in noticeable ways. Sometimes they get more frequent when I'm anxious, tired, or overstimulated, which can be distracting, especially in class or social situations. I try to suppress them sometimes, but that can be exhausting and make me more tense. Most people don't notice unless they're really paying attention, but I'm always aware of them. It's more of a mental burden than a physical burden right now. There are some tics that I have never talked about publicly. The only person that really knows is my best friend, Sam. Sam, I know you're watching this. Thank you for always supporting me. I literally would like bang my hand into the wall multiple times. Like it would seriously like cause like redness, and nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it except for her, because she was the only person that I can kind of like trust with those types of things. I couldn't even talk to my neurologist about it really. When I was still seeing her, it was really, I don't know, I was scared, I was stressed. It was a whole thing. Even though the tics are mild, they can still cause muscle tension or soreness if they happen a lot in one area. That couldn't be more true. It hurts. It hurts. I get self-conscious about ticking in front of people, especially when I don't know how they'll react. And trying to hold them in during important things like class make me feel really tired afterward. Which I've had to do obviously numerous times, because you gotta love it. You gotta love it. So my next question was, how do you manage them? Like I said, my tics are fairly mild. Like obviously they wax and wane, which is like sometimes they get worse and sometimes they get better. It all kind of just is kind of like a roller coaster when you have tics. So yeah, but most of the time they're mild. And so I don't take medication or do anything intense. But I have found a few things that help. I try to manage stress and avoid sensory overload when I can, since those seem to make my tics worse. Sometimes I use grounding techniques or press my hands together to help calm my body down. If I'm in public or a quiet place, I'll try to suppress them for a little while, but it can be tiring. And no, it's still involuntary. They still come out later on in the day, so don't say because you can suppress them they're not involuntary. They are. Just some people are better at suppressing than others, and that's what my neurologist even told me. Overall, I'm still figuring out what works best, and I try to stay away from loud or chaotic environments when I can, because they make my tics skyrocket. Obviously, I kind of already answered this one, but when did I first start noticing my tics? Technically, I first started noticing them in the summer of 2020, and then I got diagnosed with a tic disorder. And then as I was kind of finding more things out, I was looking at past videos and looking through them, and I found that like I would be ticking in some of them. I'll try to find the videos and put them like over in this area, but honestly like it's kind of hard to find them. But if I can, I would put them right here. Yeah, so that I didn't even know what tics were then, so I didn't really know exactly what they were, and I thought I was just being weird and quirky. But yeah, that's that. Is there anything that usually triggers your tics? And this is a big one. Okay, so there are definitely things that trigger or worsen my tics, even though they're mild overall. One of the biggest triggers is stress or anxiety. If I'm feeling overwhelmed emotionally, whether it's from school, social pressure, or even small things that build up throughout the day, I notice my tics becoming more frequent and harder to suppress. For example, when I'm in a quiet classroom trying to concentrate during a test, I might feel pressure to stay still and silent, and that actually makes me more aware of my body and my tics. So the tension builds up until I finally release the tic, which gives me temporary relief, but also makes me feel more self-conscious, which is one of the reasons if you were with me in high school, and even a little bit of middle school, you would notice that I would asked to use the bathroom quite frequently, and a lot of that time wasn't really to actually use the bathroom. It was because I just couldn't hold it in anymore, and so I would go to the bathroom and just release all of my tics once all the people left the bathroom. Fatigue is another big one. When I'm tired, either from lack of sleep or just a long day, my ability to suppress or regulate my tics gets weaker. I might find myself ticking more at night or after a mentally draining day. Even if I've been able to hold things together all day in public, I usually tic more once I'm alone or back in a safe space. Sometimes it feels like I've been holding it in all day, and once I finally relax, it all comes out at once. And that's a bit annoying. Sorry, I thought I heard something going on. Sensory overload is another major trigger for me. I have misophonia, so certain sounds like chewing, sneezing, or clicking silverware can really upset me. When I hear those sounds, I get this immediate wave of discomfort and irritation. And that spike in emotion usually leads to an increase in tics. It's like my nervous system can't handle the sensory input, and my body reacts by ticking as a kind of release. This happens a lot in shared spaces like restaurants or at home if others are making noises that I can't block out. That's a very big one for me. In general, the triggers for my tics are tied closely to emotion, sensory input, and exhaustion. I can't even say that. Tiredness, fatigue. It's not just physical, it's very tied to how my brain and body are reacting to the world around me. I'm still learning what patterns exist, but those are the biggest ones I've noticed so far. The next one, I already kind of went through this one, so I'm gonna wrap this one up quickly. Do I ever try to suppress my tics, and what is that like? Yes, I do. A lot of the time. There's some times where, I don't need to, or I don't feel the need to, but a lot of the time, I do. I do. Suppressing my tics feels a bit like holding in a sneeze or trying not to blink for way too long. There's this pressure that keeps building up in my body until I just can't take it anymore and need to release it. Sometimes the urge to tic becomes all I can think about, and it makes it hard to focus on anything else. I also have this constant fear that someone will notice if I tic, or that I'll draw attention to myself, so there's this layer of social anxiety added on top. That pressure often makes the urge stronger, which becomes a loop that's hard to break. Suppression helps me blend in when I feel like I need to, but it doesn't come without a cost. Yeah. Kind of already answered that one, so I'm skipping that one. What's something someone has said about your tics that really stuck with you? I really liked this question. One thing that really stuck with me was when someone said, "I didn't even notice your tics until you pointed them out." At first, I wasn't sure how to take it. Part of me felt like maybe I was overreacting or being too self-conscious, but then I realized it actually meant that what feels huge and constant to me might not even register for others. That helped me let go some of that fear that everyone was watching or judging me. That moment taught me something, that most people either don't notice or just don't understand, and that it's okay to speak up or explain when I'm ready, when I feel ready. The way people react can shape how I feel about my tics and many other people with tics. So supportive words really do matter. Do you feel like you're still figuring out what's going on with your tics? Yes, I definitely feel like I'm still figuring out what's going on with all of that. I've been aware of them since 2020, and then I kind of go into depth how, I found them out when it was like 2018, blah, 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 blah. Which shows just how long it took me to recognize them for what they were. Even now, I'm still trying to understand what triggers them, how to manage them, and what they actually mean in the bigger picture of my health. I was tested for other things that might cause me to have tics, like more severe, life-threatening stuff that I don't really like to think about. But I was tested for that, and all of it came back negative. So I just have a tic disorder now, which I'm thankful for. It could be way, way, way worse. But, sometimes I wonder whether what I have is just a mild tic disorder or if it could turn into something more. That uncertainty makes it a little scary. I'm also still learning how my tics connect to other things I experience, like anxiety, intrusive thoughts, misophonia, that's such a hard word to say, and sensory overload. Everything seems to be woven together in ways that I haven't fully figured out yet. And every time I reflect, look back at videos, or notice new patterns, I learn something new about how my brain and body work. So yes, I'm still in the process of understanding it all. It's frustrating at times, but also kind of reassuring to know that I'm not alone and that I'm allowed to still be learning, which is very nice. How do your tics affect your mental health? This one is a really hard one to kind of talk about. So this is gonna be fun. My tics definitely have an impact on my mental health, even though they're considered mild. One of the biggest things is the anxiety and self-consciousness they bring. I often feel like I have to hide them or constantly worry if people are noticing. And that kind of pressure builds up and it makes me feel tense in social situations, like I'm not fully free to just exist without monitoring myself. They also feed into my intrusive thoughts and perfectionism. If I tic or slip up in front of someone, my brain will replay it over and over, convincing me I embarrassed myself or did something wrong. It makes it harder to move on from small movements, and I end up stuck in my head more than I want to be. Sometimes I feel like I am not taken seriously because my tics are mild or not always visible, and that can feel, or not always visible, and that can feel invalidating, like I'm struggling but don't qualify for support. That affects my self-esteem too, because I start questioning whether I'm just being dramatic or overly sensitive, or even if I'm faking, even though I know that I'm not because I am diagnosed by a neurologist. Overall, my tics are more than just physical movements and sounds. They affect how I feel about myself, how I interact with others, and how safe or anxious I feel in my own body, which is pretty sad to think about. Do you ever feel embarrassed or frustrated by your tics? All the time. All the time. It's one of the hardest parts, honestly. Even though I know my tics aren't something I can control, I still feel this constant pressure to hide them, especially in public or around people who don't know me well. If I tic during a quiet moment, or if someone looks at me funny, I instantly feel embarrassed, like I've done something wrong or weird. It's not that anyone has to say anything, just the fear that they might notice is enough to make me want to shrink into myself. I also get super frustrated with my tics, especially when they interrupt things I'm trying to focus on, like reading, studying, or even just relaxing. Sometimes I'll feel totally fine and then suddenly I'll tic and it pulls me out of whatever I was doing. It's a constant reminder that I don't always have full control over my body, and that can be emotionally exhausting. What makes it worse is how invisible it can feel. Since my tics are mild, people often don't notice or they assume I'm fidgeting or being dramatic, and that makes me feel even more isolated. It's like I'm fighting a battle inside my body that no one else can see. So yes, I feel embarrassed and frustrated by my tics a lot, but I'm also learning to be kinder to myself and remember that they're not my fault. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting to experience tics? First of all, you're not weird, broken, or alone. Tics can feel confusing, scary, or frustrating at first, especially if you don't know what's happening or why. But just know that what you're going through is real and it's okay to feel unsure. A lot of people experience tics in different ways, and your experience is valid even if it doesn't look like what you've seen in videos or heard about from doctors. One of the most helpful things I've learned is to pay attention to your body without judging it. Notice what situations make your tics worse, when they ease up, or how they feel before they happen. That awareness can help you feel a little more in control, even if you can't stop the tics completely. And it also, I forgot to mention this in here, but it also helps the doctor if you go to see a doctor eventually. And you should always see a doctor for tics. Once you go to see a doctor, it will help if you've kept a diary or journal, so you guys can talk about it and hopefully figure something out or why it's happening, because there's many different reasons tics can happen. It's not just from tic disorders or Tourette's or anything like that. There's many different things that can cause tics, many different. Also, don't be afraid to talk about it with someone you trust, like a parent, doctor, or teacher. You don't have parent, therapist, doctor, or teacher. There we go. You don't have to go through this silently, and the sooner you get support, the easier it becomes to manage both the physical part and the emotional part. Tics can bring up a lot of self-consciousness and anxiety, so having someone who listens without judgment can make a big difference. Lastly, be gentle with yourself. Tics don't define you. They might be part of your story, but they aren't the whole story. You're still you, creative, smart, funny, thoughtful, and capable of amazing things, and you're definitely not alone in this journey. My support system, no, I don't really feel. Here we go. What tics do you find the most exhausting, physically, mentally, or both? Some of my tics are just annoying or inconvenient, but others are genuinely exhausting, whether physically, mentally, or both. Even the ones that don't happen often anymore still left a lasting impact. Okay. Physically exhausting tics can include neck jerking, head jerking, full body tensing, shoulder shrugging, arm flinging, hitting tics, thankfully they barely happen anymore, leg pushing, back arching, again barely happens anymore but used to happen a lot when laying down, mentally exhausting tics, sniffing, throat clearing, breath related tics, like holding my breath, that is just, that's terrifying. And a hitting tic, again, mentally, it's also mentally exhausting. Even on a day when my tics seem mild, I can end up feeling physically sore, mentally drained, and emotionally overstimulated by the end. It's not always obvious from the outside, but it adds up. What are a few things you wish people without tics knew? I wish people knew that I'm not doing this on purpose. Tics aren't habits I can just stop with enough willpower. They're involuntary. Telling me to just stop or giving me looks when I tic only makes me more anxious, which usually makes the tics worse. I'm not trying to be disruptive or get attention. It's just something my body does. I also wish people knew how exhausting it can be. Even on days when my tics are small or invisible, I might be spending a ton of mental energy holding them in, managing urges, or worrying about how others see me. It can leave me drained even if I look like I'm fine. Another big one is that having tics doesn't mean I'm not smart, mature, or capable. Tics can affect how I talk, move, or focus, but they don't define who I am. I still have goals, thoughts, and strengths like anyone else. It's just that I also have this thing my body does that I didn't ask for. Lastly, I wish people understood how much a little patience and kindness helps. Just being around someone who doesn't make me feel weird or ashamed when I tic makes such a difference. I don't need pity, I just need people to treat me like a full person, not a problem. And then there is this last one. What's something that helps calm your tics down when they're bad? It really depends on how intense they are, but I found that a few things can help calm my tics down or at least make them feel more manageable. One of the biggest things is distraction, not in a way that ignores them, but in a way that shifts my focus and lets my nervous system settle. Before I go into depth, I added a little important note. While these are the things that help me, it's important to understand that everyone with tics is different. What works for one person might not work for someone else. Tics can vary in type, frequency, intensity, and triggers, and so do the coping mechanisms that help manage them. No two people with tics are exactly the same, and that's completely normal. Whether someone has a mild tic disorder or something more complex, it's okay for them to respond to it in their own way. The most important thing is finding what works for you without comparing your journey to anyone else's. Just needed to get that out of the way. Some things that help me personally are singing, coloring if they aren't too bad, listening to music, photography. Weighted blankets are such a huge help for me. Journaling, writing, talking to someone who understands, deep breathing or sensory regulation strategies, painting or crafting, puzzles, watching my comfort YouTubers like Daz, Evie Meg, or Lauren Z Side. Amazing YouTubers. Gum or chewing necklaces. It may sound weird, but it works for me. And getting into a dark, quiet place if my tics are acting up due to sensory overload. This has been a long video, nearly 30 minutes. So I'm very scared to post this video, because if you go to past videos and you don't see me ticking in them, they are edited. They are edited. I was suppressing. I didn't want anyone to know about my tic disorder. It's scary. It's so scary putting myself out there like this, but I know if it helps one person, it's worth it. So yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely night. If you want to see more Q&As like this, or you have any other questions about things related to tics or tic disorders, please remember I do not have Tourette's. Don't go around saying that I said I had Tourette's, because I don't. And so if you guys have any more questions about anything, let me know in the comments. If you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications on so I know that you enjoyed this content. And yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely day, night, whatever time it may be when you're watching this, wherever you are in the world. So yeah, hashtag Diva Squad. Bye!